Are you looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this football and basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select two or more players, pick more or less on their projections for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the PrizePicks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, PrizePicks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/bluewire and use code BLUEWIRE. That's code BLUEWIRE at prizepicks.com/bluewire for a first deposit match of up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
Hello, friends. Kirk Henderson and Josh Bowe coming to you at exactly 10 p.m. on Wednesday, November 2nd. The Dallas Mavericks just defeated the Utah Jazz at home 103-100. Josh, how are you?
I'm doing okay. This was a very interesting game, and I'm just happy that the Mavericks came away with a win from it.
I really think that's the chief takeaway, because had they lost this game, we would need to be having some real discussions. Even though the Jazz are kind of a surprising early season team, they're at the end of things, I think they'll probably end up, deciding to mega tank at some point, because that's sort of the purpose of their squad. But lately, they've been playing really well to kick off the year, and the Mavericks got, punched in the mouth a little bit early. They're down 12 in the first quarter, and then they elected to play zone defense and held the Jazz to 65 points the rest of the game. And really, they held them to even more than that. It's just the Jazz kind of had a late flurry in the final minutes when the Mavericks were up by enough points, and it's just sort of one of these games where I think the best takeaway is to be glad that they won, to maybe read into a couple of elements into what helped them come back, and maybe just sort of dust your hands and walk away, because giving up 35 points to the Jazz in the first quarter is really annoying. And I don't want to because going zone is not really that's not something you can do against a truly good team.
Yeah, I mean it was nice party trick, and boy did the Jazz not know what to do with that. I mean that was, I mean it's one thing for you to be for that to kind of throw you for a loop, but the Jazz forgot how to play basketball every time the Mavericks played zone. I mean, they were throwing some gnarly turnovers and putting up some weird shots. This was a low possession, low scoring game, and they had 16 turnovers. That doesn't seem like a lot, but in this kind of game, it felt like a ton. I mean, their starting backcourt, Mike Conley and Jordan Clarkson, combined for 7 turnovers. I mean, they were sloppy with the ball, but credit for the Mavericks for basically, like you said, after the first quarter, they kind of flipped a switch. They didn't look like they wanted to start this game, and then the second quarter started, and they kind of were like, "Oh, we gotta play a basketball game tonight." They got into gear from the second quarter on.
So we just sort of got to get this elephant out of the room. We need to talk about it, because I think it's going to define conversations for the next couple of days. And you and I, in no small part, have led the charge on this early in the year, though I don't necessarily think this player, what in the hell is happening with JaVale McGee versus Dwight Powell? just to give people context, if you missed the game, McGee played 8 minutes and was a -7. And I don't really necessarily think he was that bad while he was on the floor, but the Mavericks were that bad while he was on the floor. Then Dwight Powell plays a mere 19 minutes and is a plus 25. I don't know what to do with these two things, because I obviously I think that Powell's energy is pretty valuable to how the Mavericks set a tone. And I think McGee, just to be quite honest, plays like he constantly, like he's sharded and he's trying to hide it. He just is, he is such a low energy player. And I feel that there's an element. I don't want to lay the Mavericks energy at McGee's feet. Like, that's not fair. That's more on Luka. But I just, how much longer can this McGee experiment go on?
I don't know. And the weird thing was tonight, I don't even feel like was one of his worst games.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was fine. He was weird.
Yeah. Like the start of the third quarter where the Jazz went up to a 15-point lead in like 3 or 4 minutes at the start of the second half. I honestly pinned more of that on Luka. He came out like Luka looked really bad to start the first quarter and to start the third quarter. So I don't know what's, is that because McGee's out there and there's something going on, or like if Powell was out there, would it not make a difference? Like, is it just Luka's mindset to coming out of the half or starting a game? I don't really know. And I know Luka ended with a brilliant line, but his defense in the first 5 minutes of the first quarter and the first 5 minutes of the third quarter were just really bad. And is that McGee's fault that he kind of gets sandbagged there tonight by the rest of the 4 Mavericks on the floor not looking like they have their S together to start the game in the third quarter? Like, I don't know. Like, is there just some chemistry thing? But I mean, it is what it is. The Mavericks keep starting games and they keep starting second halves, getting kind of run off the floor, and then things stabilize in the second quarter. Things stabilize, toward the end of the third quarter. So I don't know. I mean, they got to figure it out, because it's unwise to keep being down double digits in every single first quarter. But it didn't bite them in the butt tonight because they just turned it on in that second quarter, and the zone defense helped. And yeah, Dwight Powell, he's doing Dwight Powell things.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Like, I have been vocally and consistently on the McGee signing as being terrible because it was terrible. Like, there's no other way around that. But in this specific game, I feel like that it wasn't necessarily him, only that when Powell went in the game, things changed enough to make a difference. And like, there's just a whole bunch of weird stuff in this game. Like, would you believe that Spencer Dinwiddie took 20 shots? Like, I'm looking at this and I'm just like, I don't feel like he took 20 shots, but he did. Like, this is just one where I think we're going to have to chalk it up, be glad that they won, and walk away. I mean, there's some real concerns in this box score. Like, Tim Hardaway, my friend, you got to find something. Somebody pointed it out to me online. I had many DMs during the game that basically said, every time Tim does something on his own, something bad happens. If he's fed a shot, it's fine. But when he's like forcing, it was atrocious. I mean, 1 of 9. That's hard against the Jazz, because they're not fantastic on defense. What do you make of him?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what he was doing before he got hurt last year, which is the worry, right? And for me, it's been, Tim Hardaway Jr. has a pretty long track record. He's been in this league for a while now. He's not a young pup. He's only had, before he came to Dallas, he only had one season where you can consider him like a positive player, and it was when he was with Atlanta. And then all those other years in New York, he was a minus player. And then he comes to Dallas, and the midseason trade, he doesn't look great, but he wasn't really healthy. He had a surgery to end the season, I think. And then he plays the 2 best seasons of his career back to back, his first 2 full seasons with Dallas. And you're kind of like, oh, did the Mavericks just kind of find something? And now, last season and this season, he's kind of gone back to what he was before he came to Dallas. And part of me is worried that Hardaway's productivity was tied at the hip of Rick Carlisle, who, as we all know, had a very strict and stringent offensive philosophy and rule set and what players were allowed to do and not do.
Yeah.
And for a player like Tim Hardaway, who has a bunch of bad habits before he came to Dallas, I felt like Carlisle was really good for him because Carlisle was basically like, hey, we're cutting all this bad crap out of your game. You're going to take spot up threes. You're going to take, threes within the motion of our offense. You're going to cut out all that dribbling stuff. You're going to cut out all the bad long twos. You're going to cut out all the bad drives to the rim. And you're just going to take open, good shots when you get fed them, or you're going to attack a closeout and you're going to go to the rim and you're not going to pull up for an 18-footer. And when he was pegged into that role, he was phenomenal. And, Jason Kidd has brought a lot of things that Rick Carlisle didn't to this team. And, they had their most successful season ever last year. And we have to give credit to Kidd's coaching for part of that. And how he, the players, the stories were written, Carlisle was rigid and the players were kind of tired of it. And Kidd is definitely more open, more loose with how things go. And maybe for a player like Tim Hardaway Jr., who picked up so many bad habits his first, 6-7 years in the league, maybe it doesn't mesh. Maybe just Kidd's coaching style and Hardaway's ability just don't mesh for whatever reason. But again, 6 games, although, the 42 games he played last year were also not good. So that's a concern, and we're just going to have to wait and see until the sample is larger before we make a definitive statement. But that's just that's the concern. We'll see if it turns out that way.
Well, and then the other thing that's worth addressing has to be the truly all of one thing. And then, Christian Wood was so rough in that first half.
Yeah.
And then in the second half, he plays a really remarkable game, finishes with 21 points on 15 shots, grabs 10 rebounds. Pretty much the only statistical contributions he had, which is really funny. He had 3 turnovers, but those turnovers were happening in the first half, a weird travel call. Elements of why everyone who is bullish on Wood was so. There was a missed free throw coast to coast, Giannis Antetokounmpo light dunk. There were some oops. There were some post feed. It's there's a reason why I think, and a lot of us think, the Mavericks need to feature him the way that KP sort of demanded to be featured, but wasn't good enough for. If the offense is really going to hum, it's going to be because of Wood's involvement. There's some statistics that have been flying around the past couple of days. Wood is not involved in enough pick and rolls, period, particularly with Luka. But hopefully that's something that the Mavericks can work out. They have to find him more minutes. It's crushing Kidd that he can't, that he's going to have to play Wood more. I can just, because Wood is kind of a mess on defense.
Tonight was definitely tonight was his worst defensive game in terms of how noticeable it was.
But I don't think he gets any better without feeling the be in a truly wild concept. What I recommend the Mavericks do is that they coach him, is that they show him where he's making mistakes, because he's a really fluid, natural basketball player in a way that cannot be taught. And he helps. They don't win this game without some of his play, particularly with Luka on the bench. He was just really solid. And, he's not going to always have perfect games. There's elements of him where you can tell he is putting sort of the cart before the horse and how he wants to play. There's expectations with his game. He would probably not say that's the case. He gave a couple of really nice post-game quotes. Let me read one of them to you here. What did he say? Where did it go? He said, Luka has been showing me love. He made every effort to give me the ball tonight. I love playing with these guys. That was on the Bally post-game. So there's really something here. There's something there, and the Mavericks need to leverage it because the season is so long. These guys are good basketball players. I understand that the defense is going to frustrate Kidd. Kidd basically he in his post-game interviews, he's talking about how that they can't play any man-to-man defense. And it's okay, we get it. We get that they're not great at this stuff. But at that point, you have to leverage what your strengths are. and figure out how to make these things work together and string together wins, which, being 4-3 right now, they could very easily be undefeated. They could also very easily have a couple more losses on their hands. I'm thinking back to where we were at this point last year, where we were all kind of like borderline disgusted with how they were playing, but they were also winning, so we didn't really know what to do. And I that's just sort of been in my head, in that I want them. I would much rather look back around game 40 or 50 and say, remember when we were just really like frustrated by watching this team and that they figured it out? I don't know. I'm rambling at this point.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
Yeah, I got a couple things I can bounce off of. One, I understand why people are frustrated about our response to anyone who's been freaking out in these first 7 games has been, look at the track record, look at what they did last year, look what they did the year before. This team has a penchant for turning things around in the second half of the season. Don't let 7 games or 6 games, 5 games, however many games, don't let that get in the way of the bigger picture. But on the other end of the floor, fans are going to be fans, and they live and die by the results of these games, and I understand that. And also, the roster hasn't changed enough, I think, for the average fan to be like, oh, totally cool, I'm bought in, like, I'll give you all the patience. So, like, usually when you're saying like, hey, we're figuring things out, patience, it's like for teams that are, new parts, or you're integrating a lot of new things. And it's like, this is the second year kid, so it's not like they're integrating a new coach. And the roster is the exact same, except for Christian Wood and JaVale McGee. Like, how many, a lot of Mavs fans have seen Luka play next to Finney Smith and Maxey and Hardaway and Powell, and now Bullock for a lot of minutes. And I think I can understand why some fans are frustrated, like why is it taking so long when the pieces haven't really changed? And I think there's reasons for that. Like, like Kid said, every season's different. You don't just roll it back. And like, I understand that, but I'm just like, to give some of the fans a break, because I know I kind of kill them sometimes with the impatience after short games. I get it. Like, it can be frustrating to see a team that's relatively the same for the last 3 years still kind of look like they have to figure, like, why do they have to figure things out at the start of every season? Like, I can kind of understand that, even if there is a good reason for it.
Right.
Another thing is with Wood, like the not like Dinwiddie, Luka, and Wood combined for 74 of the 103 points. Bad defense and all. If Wood doesn't play, if he was benched for his poor defensive effort in the first half, the Mavericks might have scored 80 points tonight, regardless of how good they might have been on the defense. Like, they might have lost this game 92-80. Like, no one else was doing anything. I mean, Reggie Bullock didn't score any points until the dagger clutch 3-pointer to seal the game. Dorian had 4
talk about
points.
him.
Well, yeah. Let me finish my point on Wood real quick. We'll talk about Bullock. But so, like, this is going to be the basis of a column I'm going to write, but I've got cobwebs tonight, so I apologize. I'm not going to be able to get to it tonight. But they just have to figure it out, because he's the difference. Like, the roster is the exact same if it's not for him. He's like you've said it before, he's the ceiling raiser. He might be a floor, he could maybe lower the floor if he doesn't work out, but like, also, he's the only thing on this team that can make a difference between last season and this season. Otherwise, it's basically the same team minus your second best player, Brunson. So they have to get the most out of him. He's going to make mistakes, but you see the plays that he makes. Like, he's not scoring 21 points because like Luka is feeding him under the rim all game, or he's nailing a bunch of spot up looks. I mean, he's, honest to God, one of the few guys on this team that you can just kind of give the ball to and be like, do something. And he can do something, and he can attack closeouts, and he can operate in the space that the attention Luka gets, and he can take guys off the dribble in the mid post, and he can the coast to coast fast break. Like Finney Smith can't do that. Bullock can't do that. Maxey can't do that. Dwight can't do that. Tim can't do that, as we've seen over the last year and a half now. They have to play him, and they have to figure it out. And when he plays, he has to get shots because that's his skill set. So it might look weird, and there might be some really ugly defensive possessions, but they traded for him, so they have to use, he's not like some foster puppy that showed up on their doorstep when Kid and Nico took over the team. This regime traded for him, so they need to be able to figure it out. They need to be able to get him shots. They need to be able to utilize his offensive gifts, because you can see in a game like tonight where the roster outside of Luka and outside of Dinwiddie, they didn't have it. His 21 points, in a 3-point game and a low scoring 3-point game, that's such a massive, massive impact into how this game went. So that's kind of all I have to say about Wood. We can talk about Bullock now. Sorry.
I do want to note that the difference with Wood is, and we've watched a lot of basketball together. We've watched a lot of bad basketball together. I earnestly believe that when it comes to talent level and ability, Wood is probably the most skilled big that Luka has ever played with. We've seen guys that can do specific things in specific ways, but the all-around package, Wood and Luka's offensive game mesh. And that's where it's when we're talking that they need to find ways to maximize it, that's sort of what we mean. And I had the criticism today online of Luka that I think Luka uses screens to mismatch hunt a hell of a lot more than he does to run an offense. The problem with that criticism is that it doesn't really hold water, because it's only a complaint if it doesn't work. Well, Luka scored 33 points tonight. What am I complaining about? It's bitching for the sake of bitching to a degree, whereas the Luka, as the superstar and as the person with the ball, is going to have to find ways to get him the ball. And they did that tonight. I think there were oops, there were dives to the rim. It was a lot more than just some of what we've seen the past few games where Wood is sort of a bystander. So that's my thoughts on it. But
yeah.
Let's talk about Reggie a little bit. Reggie takes a lot of heat. And I guess I've just sort of, for being, one of the loudest Mavs complainers, my thoughts about Reggie boil down to this. I expect him to play well after about 25 games.
Yeah, I mean, that's the track record, right? He can't shoot in October or November. And that's not like a Mavs thing. That's a career thing.
Yeah,
ever since he's been a big, and he gets the benefit of the doubt, right? He's a 10-year vet. He's been on multiple teams that have been solid. He was on good Clippers teams. He was on the one good Knicks team in the last 20 years. And he was the difference in last season when he went into the starting lineup when Tim got hurt. The team turned it around that moment. So yeah, he gets the benefit of the doubt. And I mean, he's still playing pretty good defense. The Jazz, Conley and Clarkson didn't really do anything. I mean, they put up some shots and they made a couple buckets, couple 3-pointers, but they weren't consistently good. So I think Bullock deserves some credit for being able to play defense through that. But yeah, unfortunately, and it's like this for Dorian too. Dorian shoots 28% in the month of October for his career. Thankfully, the calendar's flipped to November. So those guys are just slow starters, and it's just kind of, it feels weird to be like, well, what's going on? And it's like they did this last year. Pretty sure they did. Finney Smith did it the year before that. So just kind of one of those things, it's you just gotta be patient with them.
Well, that's kind of all we got. I don't think I love talking about basketball with you, which is why we always talk a little longer than we meant. I don't think there's too much to read into about this game. They have a really tough contest on Friday against the Toronto Raptors, who have won their past 2 games by a combined 36.5 points, I think is maybe that. Yeah, they're 43 and 30 has been their past 2 win margins. So the Mavericks better come ready to play. The Toronto Raptors, the regular season Toronto Raptors do not fuck around.
They really do not.
Pascal Siakam, they have a bunch of length. They play super hard. So the lackadaisical horseshit that the Mavericks have come out with is not going to work against Toronto, even if it's on their home court.
Now, if they start this game with the same same vigor that they started this game with, they'll be down. They'll be down like 35-15 at the end of the first
I
quarter.
mean, I wouldn't. I just listen.
They got to be ready.
So post game, Jason. This is from Callie Kaplan, Dallas Morning News. Jason Kidd lauded Dwight Powell and said the Mavs need to start quarter one better. Do you consider Dwight Powell a starter? Kidd responds, "If I can start 6, yeah. I'll take the T. I'll pay the fine. No, but he deserves it. And that'll be something we talk about. So we'll see." Boiling back to what we talked about at the beginning with McGee, even though I don't necessarily think tonight is on him, there is enough of a sample size to where it's like he's just not bringing what they need. And until he does, they're like, you can't get off to rough starts. And if they start McGee on Friday, which I honestly think they will, because their kid is nothing if not stubborn. And that's the sort of thing that's going to stick. If they get like blown off the court in the first quarter, maybe it's going to take a game like that, like a real butt whooping for them to, because that's the other thing. They've really not gotten their asses handed to them quite yet. It's just been the three losses that they've had have been stupid, not bad. Like maybe they need like a bad loss for them to wake it up, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And they promised him, like, the reason why McGee is here and not in Milwaukee is because they promised him a starting job. So to take that away from him 7 games in, they have to play some, it sucks, but they kind of have to play the politics game and they have to manage things like, it's stupid, but I mean, they've got McGee signed to this season and 2 more full seasons. So if they don't trade him, like, they have to. Sounds so stupid to appease a player that only plays like 8 or 12 minutes a game, but there's some locker room management there, is all I'll say. Like they have to probably be a little delicate to figure it out. But yeah, you're probably right. And then one more thing I wanted to bring up before we go is I think a big difference tonight is that we did, the 2 most high leverage offensive possessions for the Mavericks. Luka Doncic didn't take a shot. Spencer, Reggie Bullock made, that open 3-pointer after he got the double. And then Spencer made a short shot in the paint to get him to that 6-point lead with about, 2 minutes left. And then I think Spencer had another, after the Bullock jumper, Spencer had another opportunity. He missed he created himself a nice little mid-range look and he missed it. So, Luka did have a step back with a minute left that he missed, but otherwise he kind of conceded a little bit in the final minute. So we'll see if that has, if that's a pattern or if that just is how tonight's game played out.
Man, what a weird start to the season. The Mavericks are 4-3. Spencer Dinwiddie is shooting 46% from 3. Sorry, I just need to look that up. Like, it's such a funny number. It's such a funny number.
They've played 6 clutch games and out of 7. Like, it's a weird season so far.
Sure. Luka Doncic is probably an MVP front runner for anybody who cares about that stuff.
By the way, Luka has scored over 30 points in every single game.
7 straight games.
And
he tied somebody.
Broke one of Wilt's record.
The funny part is the next person up on the list, like with starting a season with 30-point games. After 6, there was one guy, so Luka tied him for 7th. I can't remember who it is. It's an older guy that none of us know, so don't kill me on this. But then the next person is Wilt Chamberlain at 23. So if Luka's just kind of sitting in rarefied air is the point.
And normally with the Wilt stats, you're like, oh, that's just one of those things. But man, I don't know. This season, it's they might need Luka to score 30 points in 20 straight games if they want to have a solid record. So we'll see.
The immortal, he's tied with the immortal Jack Twyman. Wilt also started the season with 8. So, if Luka scores 30 points against the Toronto Raptors, that's special. Like, that's nuts. Like, the Raptors are good at defense. Anyways, I'm keeping you too long. You want to go to bed?
That's okay.
All right, Kirk Henderson and Josh Bowe. We're talking too much, but having a good time. Please come to MavsMoneyball.com. We got all sorts of stuff coming up. We got a piece coming tomorrow about our guy, Josh Green, who we did not get a chance to really talk about tonight. I will say, just to close it out here, Josh Green hit 2 open threes. He took the open threes. I am so pleased about that. I can't describe it. but there's more about his plus minus and sort of what he's doing while he's on the floor that we have coming up tomorrow. I want to say my guy Matthew Phillips is writing a little something about Luka Doncic and screens. Don't know when that's going to go up. We have lots of stuff. We're trying, the game coverage, there's a relentless drumbeat of stuff happening all the time. We don't cover nearly everything that happens. For example, Jaden Hardy got sent up and down to the G League. We're not going to write on that every time because that's going to happen all season long. But please pop by Mavs Moneyball. Tell your friends about the podcast. Download Spotify Live and listen to me and talking to fans. We have a good time there. This has been Kirk Henderson and Josh Bowe, and we will see you guys on Friday night.